everyone, and welcome back to the Colour Cave, where we like to play with art stuff. My name is Jem. I'm still very tired, but I'm feeling a little bit perkier today. I've been wanting to do this video for a while, but the subscription box is kind of getting in the way sometimes. And that thing I want to talk about today is scratchboard art. And I want to show you that you can enjoy this as a medium regardless of your skill level, and how easy it is to progress through from having never done it before to creating something that's actually quite impressive even to your own critical self. So I only came across scratchboard art late last year as something I had never tried before, and it was courtesy of the November upgrade and featured a gentleman called Conor's art studio. If you even have a remote interest in wildlife art or scratchboard art, please go and check out all of his social media, because he's one talented man. And I am very enthusiastic about his work, and I've got him to thank for me actually feeling really motivated and inspired to go ahead and give it a go for myself. I will also leave links down in the description, live links to the videos related to scratchboard art that we have that we've already done on the channel, and you can check those out after. But the idea here is to show you and really showcase the fact that scratch art is for absolutely everybody, and that's what I fully intend to do here. So you can see I've got this pile of goodies here, so I'll not keep you in suspense much longer. This is my little scratch art toolkit here. So I'm going to show you all the things I've got in here, and we will use some of these when I show you the different stages of and skill levels of scratch art. The first thing I've got here is a little brush, and that's just really soft and it's great for dusting off your scratchy bits. And I have got a selection of pointed tools here, and these are plastic and wood. So these are, although they've got a wee bit of a sharp edge on, these are obviously much safer for maybe smaller hands to use, or if you're like me, if you've got a defective hand, if you do jab yourself with one of these by accident, you're far less likely to cause any sort of serious injury. There's points and shapes here of different sizes, and this end's covered on this one because it's quite a pointy point, and different thicknesses as well. So this here is just an X-Acto knife, like a craft knife with a very sharp blade on. And when I first tried scratch art, I found that this was the item I got on best with, and it was like a one-trick pony, it's like one implement does everything, it's fine. So we've got that as well. And these were the little tools that came in the upgrade, and these tools are by SD. SD makes different craft tools. Some of you may be familiar with their lino cutting implements, and these have different shapes, different edges on them, so that you can create different marks on your scratch surface. Now these things in this last pouch here, these were on the recommendation of Conor himself, and the first two are interesting implements. These are like steel wool brushes, and if I just hold that up, hopefully you'll be able to see that. They're retractable, but those are wire, those are stiff bristles. And I find these personally are really good for llama and sheep fleece, because it's got that slightly chaotic twist to it, so that when you're scratching it down, it's giving you multiple lines at the same time. So I've got two of those, one slightly stiffer than the other, and it's like that one's slightly softer for a much softer edge. And lastly, and I know these are things that Conor himself is very fond of using, and these are tattoo needles. So I've picked out, I got like a variety box, and they came in like a huge pack. So I went through them and picked out the ones that I found useful. Some of you, I'm aware, won't be familiar with tattoo needles at all if you've never had a tattoo. And this is basically what they look like. So there is a selection. Let me pick one out. Probably the 7M is going to be easiest to show you. On the end of this is actually several needles all together, and these ones are in a line on this one. That's quite difficult to show you, and obviously they're jagged. Obviously they're jagged, they're needles, but they've got a bend to them. You can actually, they're quite pliable. So when you're working on a surface, depending on the pressure that you want to use, this particular one here will give you X amount of lines, and you can lean into it and put more pressure into it. So they're very, very handy to use. They are quite delicate, and also you have to be careful you're not going to poke yourself in the hand. Yeah, that is my little toolkit, and that's just a selection of supplies. I would highly recommend that you try out different things, like grab stuff from around the house and just see what kind of marks they make, because that's half the fun, as I've found up to this point. But I find for me this is quite a good go-to set, and out of these, the things I use the most are these little wire brushes. and my X-Acto knife. That's just me personally though. I tend to be quite a no frills person when it comes to stuff like this. That's just to give you some ideas of the kind of things that you might want to use. So now that I've got you excited about all the different tools and things that there are and all the stuff that you can use, let's talk about the surfaces and what you can do if you have never tried scratch art before. So this, I would say, is definitely a beginner expertise level or skill level. So if you're very new to scratch art, or if you have an impairment, this might be a really good way for you to go. These are scratch postcards. There's different scenes here, European buildings. So this pack's got things like the Eiffel Tower in it and the Leaning Tower of Pisa. So these are kind of like a variety packs. So if I open one of these up to show you, it is a proper postcard. Like you can actually send these in the mail if that's what you would like to do. The idea with these is, as you can see, they are on paper. They're on cards, so they're quite thin. They're very, very inexpensive. You don't have to pay a lot of money to get half decent ones of these. There are very cheap ones on Amazon. I wouldn't recommend them. But something like this. And as you can see, the design is already on. It's actually printed on the card for you. So that gives you guidelines, and it means that you can create an image without having to worry about actually drawing it on yourself. So if it's something that you know, maybe you're not confident as a drawer, these are absolutely great, and obviously you can pick and choose. There's loads of different designs, and I see a lot, for those of you that are in the UK, it'll be Hobbycraft, and the US it's Hobby Lobby. If you've been to any of these big sort of craft places, they usually have really big ones of these, and it's usually like a lion or a tiger, and they're foil. Like anything like that, they're really easy to get on with. You only need one scratching implement, and I tend to find that with the paper ones or the card ones like this, we want to use something that isn't just quite as pointy and sharp. So the likes of the tattoo needles, have an implement like this, or even one of the orange sticks, you know, the wooden ones. I think that these are quite effective. If you start working away at the grey areas and just using them as a guideline. So obviously I'm going to start with a firework because that's fun. And we use our little brush here just to push off the shavings. And you can see already that sticks out like a sore thumb. I'll zoom in a little bit. Let's do a little bit more, just show you what's what here. The idea here is that the paper underneath, the colours are obviously fashioned in such a way that when you scratch off the grey areas, you're going to get a nice array of colours. So our fireworks sticking out beautifully already, beautifully. But these are obviously planned out. Let's try one of the buildings here, shall we? Let's try this little dude here. I'm not even having to press that hard, and that's something for me, pressing hard for a long time with things like this. It tends to become problematic, and I'm having no issues. I'm using a really light pressure. I have to say though, holding an orange stick for a long period of time doesn't sit well with me. I'm better off with something like the thicker the barrel, the better I get on, but that's just personally, obviously. But there you go, you can see what that, look at the colour that's come out in that. It's like those oranges, like so lovely. So you can see here, without having to do a lot of planning or without having to be a very experienced artist, oh, we're really going for it now, look, woo! You can get some really nice imagery, and you've put the work in yourself. I am a huge fan of black backgrounds and working on black paper as well, so this is like right up my street. So if you'd really like to try some scratch art, but you're maybe not so sure about whether or not you would like it, or how much you're going to be into it, these little packs here are great for starting out, just to give it a bash. And if you enjoy it, then you're going to get lots of fun out of this. Like, I'm in love with that already. I'm totally going to finish that one. Totally. So as an absolute beginner, you can enjoy scratch art with a minimum like set of tools. That I do recommend having a little soft brush, though. These are great. Okay, so what if you're feeling a bit braver? Maybe you've done a few of these and you quite like the idea of scratch art, feeling a bit braver, or maybe you are a bit more of an experienced artist and are a bit more comfortable. Then like a lovely intermediate or middle step is to move on from these pre-printed designs onto plain scratchboard paper. Now this is scratchy scratch paper. It was very, very well named. And there's this little sticker on the back here that tells you what kind of paper it is. So this is gold foil. Little hologram paper. Nice, nice. And these ones are obviously multicolour. Probably quite similar to the postcard ones. Right, you know I'm going to have to go for the hologram one, like the holograph one, because that looks pretty. So we'll take this out of here. So the reason that I'm saying that this is an intermediate option, I am obviously going to explain myself, otherwise there wouldn't be much point in the video. Okay, so the reason that this is an intermediate option is this is still really, really cheap. You can buy packs of like 50 sheets of this paper for like £5 or £6. So really, you know, like $7 or $8, not a lot of money at all. So it means that if you make mistakes or, you know, you want to get a lot of practice in, you can do it without spending a lot of money. But in addition, a lot of these packs, and it was one of the reasons that I bought that specific pack, this one comes with stencils. So again, for those of you that are maybe not quite as confident artists or aren't used to doing your own line work and sketching, you have a myriad of options. And also, obviously, you can go online and buy other stencils of a particular thing you're looking for, even if it's just for the outline. So let's take, I am quite taken by this. I love stars as well. So let's take the squirrel and the stars because they're conveniently right there. And again, just using an orange stick, I don't really need to do more than that. If you want to fill in the entire area, again, maybe you feel like you're not much of an artist or a new artist, you can keep your stencil there. Oh, look at that holographic. That's amazing. Oh, that has just made my morning, everyone. And or perhaps you're a little bit more confident, or maybe you've gained some confidence. Maybe you've done a bit of scratching, and you can take the outline from the stencil and you can, you know, fill in the rest yourself, or fill in, because we're not filling in, we're taking away. Maybe you can scratch out the rest. It's a really good idea, especially if you're at this kind of angle. If you're doing something like this, if you pin the rest of the stencil down just with a bit of washi tape. Look at this little dude. Oh, I love the fact that we're only in the, you know, like the middle of this video, and I'm like, yeah, animals. There you go. So you can use the full stencil, as I've indicated, as I've demonstrated there with that first star. And if you're feeling a little bit braver or a bit more creative, you can use just the outline, and you can, you know, take the scratching as far as you would like in the rest of the picture. Let's zoom in a little bit here. There we go, that's better. So the likes of here, you know, maybe you want some shadow area and some contrast. So, you know, maybe you would cut in some texture without actually taking away all of the black. You know, there's numerous ways you can deal with this. Like, there's just so much to do. Give him a little eye. Or if you're feeling silly, give him a little smile. I feel like he needs a proper nose though. There you go. So you can see what I mean. That's like a nice sort of stepping stone. And if you're kind of past the stencil stage or wanting to move to the next step, I just like to point out how shiny that is as well. Look, I really like this paper. It's a really good thickness, this particular paper as well. And the other thing that you can do in the next step on, and it's actually what Conor demonstrates and how he does all of his own scratch art, is to make your own stencil. The easiest way to do that is to get a sheet of tracing paper and draw your design onto tracing paper in graphite pencil. So it's up to you whether you want to do an initial drawing and then trace the drawing onto the tracing paper and then transfer it on here, or just draw it straight onto the tracing paper. Bear in mind, if you do that, it will be a mirror image. Again, I just want to give you a really quick demonstration of this. I've got some tracing paper here. Right, okay, 5B pencil here. Right, let's say I wanted to do, I'm going to keep this really simple, obviously, because I just want to give you a quick demonstration. But if I draw a really simple weather design here, and then maybe the moon's out as well. The moon! Okay, so say that I decide that this is what I want to do. I can bring this onto here. Can turn it round, and then if I draw on the other side, so I've flipped over my tracing paper. Okay, so I've just gone over the design again, and if I tilt that in the light, you can see that the graphite on the original side, so my original drawing, has transferred onto the scratch paper, and that looks remarkably similar to our grey lines here. So you've basically done this yourself. And then you can just carry on as before, proceed, and you can follow your outline and do what you like. So that's obviously that's a very simple example of what I'm talking about. But if you want to show where your shaded areas and everything are, all you need to do is put them in this initial drawing, and then it will transfer for you so that you can follow along on your scratch board just the same. You're essentially still using a stencil, but it just happens to be your own stencil. And this is particularly good, not even as an intermediate step, but as an advanced scratchboard artist, to help you remember placement of things, where you want things, and if a certain thing has come across in your drawing. Sometimes when you are doing things on scratchboard, it can kind of get lost in translation a little bit. So by doing it as a stencil and putting in all the detail in the original drawing, it's not going to get lost in translation here. So maybe I want, see now I'm like, yeah, I need to finish this. Jem started, so she's got to finish. Oh, shouldn't have any black on it at all. I want all the holographic glory. You see where, you get where I'm going with that, don't you? So anyway, you can get some really nice techniques. So this brings me nicely on to the final stage, and that is for those of you that are accomplished artists, a bit further down your art journey, perhaps in a place where I am. By no means an expert, I hasten to add. I am no expert, and I have only been dabbling with scratchboard art since November, but I have been drawing for 5 years now, so I'm a little bit further down the road. This is where we're heading, and this is what was in the November up crate. I like these specifically because they are literally board, so it's a much harder surface, it's a higher quality surface than say your paper. You can do a lot more with this. And as you can see, it comes in a variety of shapes and sizes. The downside to this is it is very, very expensive to pick up in the UK. I'm not sure about other countries, but I think regardless of your location, in comparison to the paper, these are super expensive. And it's one of those things that if you make a mistake, you're very limited in how you can rectify it. So I wouldn't recommend a scratchboard for absolute beginners, unless you're like me and you're just like, I'm not scared, and you just want to have a go. So here is a board that I received, and it was actually damaged in the mail. You can see it's got a few chips out of it, but these scratch boards are basically clay and they've been coated with black, so when you scratch away the black, you are revealing the clay underneath. Because it's damaged, I've used this as kind of like a guinea pig board. So if I zoom in a little bit here, you can see all the different textures and marks that I've made with all the different tools. So this is when I was testing out the tattoo needles. And you can see the difference in the depth compared to our scratchboard paper here, where you're basically going to get the same kind of line. You can do this in increments and in layers, and you can really get depth and a lot of tonality, degrees of contrast, and it can give you some really highly realistic drawings. So this here is one of the little steel wool pens, and that's obviously taken away quite a lot. That's the one I use for llama and sheep fleece. But you can see the different things here, and I've actually marked them. The white plastic too, and the 3RL too flimsy, so that was too bendy for my liking. So there's loads of different ways to do it. And the beauty about this as well is you can still use the stencil method, your tracing paper stencil method. That will work really, really well. And as I mentioned, Conor, who is absolutely, his work is out of this world, it really is. That's how he does his, because he has to remember what he was going to put in certain places and where he wants his shading, and he finds that the easiest way to do it, and he actually annotates his work, so he'll put like B and W so that he knows which bits he was meaning to leave dark, etc. I have done 2 of these, and I'm sure most see that if you were around in November will remember them. We did the one with the upgrade, which was the cow, and we also did the llama as well, which is like our pet llama that likes to sniff eyeballs. But I've sold both of those, they're gone, and that was the first time I'd ever tried it. Absolutely highly recommend it. And if you get really brave or stupid like me, then you can just freehand stuff. So I'm going to show you here just very quickly. So the likes of this, maybe you would want the veins in your leaf to be quite white, quite stark. So you could press in and go over those a couple of times. I've lost my little brush. There it's there. But you could work away on this. So I'm hardly pressing at all there. I'm just letting the tip of that X-Acto blade go over and just sort of like skim the surface. So you can see there, and you can get some hatching in as well. So if you wanted to cross hatch that, and then you can go back over your outline Really make that stand out. So you can see where I'm going. The point is there's depth and there's layers and there's degrees with these scratch boards that you won't necessarily get with especially some of the cheaper papers. So the ability to have that to freehand as well, and also use the stencil method, as is very popular, particularly with doing complex artworks. You can see why this is a very, very popular choice. The other thing that you can do with this as well is you can actually stain this with inks. The example we were given in the up crate was India ink. You can pick any colour of ink and you can brush it over. Because it's clay underneath and it's all white, you can choose where you want the colour to go, and you're adding it after the fact. The other nice thing as well, although I don't recommend it, is if you do make a mistake. Now obviously I've got a hand that spasms. I can be working away here and in a split second I'm down here and I've done, I don't know I'm doing it. You can use black ink to cover up a mistake. You can actually dye it back in. You may have some trouble getting texture back over the top of it, because obviously this is a destructive media. You are taking something away. You can't build that back in. So the India ink will help you in a pinch, but you can't use it as a sort of regular corrector like you would with an eraser or your undo button if you're digital. But if you have a catastrophic monumental disaster, it can be used to cover stuff up. Now what I've got here is one of these little silicone tipped brushes. I still have a set of these for sale in the stash shop if anyone's interested. They're just really easy to clean. I usually use them for masking fluid, but I just want to give you a demonstration here. I've got some India ink. Say I decided I didn't like my leaf, I'm just going to plop a tiny bit of that down, and then I can use this to spread it out over the area. Now the good thing about these silicone brushes is you don't get any brush marks because there's no bristles. That's a solid, the black part is solid, so it leaves things nice and smooth, and I find it's really, really good because the scratch board is a really smooth surface. It's kind of helpful. Okay, so the last thing I've got here is the Artful Offensive ink. It's horrendous, this stuff, but it's going to demonstrate perfectly what I want here. A bit of scrap paper. I'll just plonk a little bit of that down there. So droppers are handy as well. So you can put this on your white scratched out areas. Normally, obviously, it wouldn't just be an outline, but you can leave that to dry a little bit, not completely dry because you want to be taking the excess off. And then if you just take a rag and you can dab away at the excess there and just let the rest of it dry, and the clay will actually suck up that colour. The white balance in the camera is totally going to fight with this and try and correct it, but when you see it next to the white areas above, you can see it's picked up that orange. So you can actually colour your images, and it's obviously better because it's going to be more accurate because you're doing it after the fact, whereas with our scratch board paper, the colours are underneath, and unless it's been pre-planned in the likes of our postcard situation here, it's very difficult for you to do something with that and control it freehand. But with this scratch board, you can absolutely do it, and it's not going to damage the integrity of the scratch board by putting the ink down on it at all. So absolutely highly recommend. So as you can see, scratchboard art is such an accessible, fun, forgiving, all-encompassing type of art that almost everyone can get involved in at any level. Budget is not an issue, skill level is not an issue, and you know what, it's just really, really good fun. I'm a huge advocate of it, and all of you know that I am very much of the mindset that art should be accessible to all, and I think this is a perfect example of how people can enjoy a form of art without having to worry about having loads of fancy supplies or being a really good sketcher or, having an out of this world imagination. If you want to be creative in any way, shape or form, you absolutely have the opportunity to do this with scratch art, and I absolutely love it, and I can't wait to start my next scratch art animal. I just need to get my own animal well again, so I've got a little bit of time in my hands to do that. So I hope you've enjoyed this today, and I hope that maybe you've learned something or it's inspired you to try it, because I would be really happy. Even if one or two of you have a go, I'll be like, yes. As I said, some of this will be in various orientations in the stash shop. If you'd like to buy from the channel and support us here in the cave, that would be great. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out with me today, guys. Really, really appreciate it. Have fun, everyone, and bye-bye for now.